Welcome back to Built by Boat. Today we have Smokey's 2.3 turbo motor on the stand, still. And we are going to put on the Ganari exhaust turbo manifold plus the turbo, do a little bit of mock-up of the turbo drain. We're going to assemble the intake manifold, just mock up that stuff, and do a little trimming here and there. I'm going to take you through the process of what I've done to the motor so far. I'm still waiting for the ARP head bolts. I called JEGS yesterday and they said an estimated ship out time of May 9th for the bolts, but if you go on their website, it says that they're not even going to get them in their back order till May 31st. So I just keep getting the runaround. It's been almost 6 months and I'm waiting for these head bolts, so I'm at a stall. So we're going to do a little bit of mock-up with the rest of the stuff on this motor, as well as we'll go back into the trailer and do a little mock-up on the intercooler piping. I did a little bit of research and there wasn't much on the internet for pictures showing. I have a better idea of where the pipes are going to go, so I think we're going to have to shift the radiator over one way, the intercooler over the other way, and make some room for those pipes to go through. I think that my personal opinion is I'm going to notch the radiator support on both sides because I don't want it to cut into the boot. It's a tight area there, and I think that for long-term usage, even though it's a direct install, I think that you would end up with rubbish through your hoses and just rubbish through your piping and stuff. So I think I'd rather just take the time now to clearance it. So that being said, let's get into this. Well, there you have it. Just like magic, over, 30 seconds, everything seems to be on. So to start, we're going to have to clock the turbo housing to the correct location. The turbo drain is going to have to come down as straight a shot as possible down to the pan. Now, on the actual turbo blocks, it's plumbed into the side of the block over here. And it's such a short distance, it's very hard to make your own turbo drain and get a good angle on that area. So on the other two motors that I've done, I've actually plumbed it into the pan, like in this area right here. So I'm going to have to trim the motor mount like I did on the Turbo Mustang here just a little bit, just so I can get the clearance and the oil line isn't touching on the motor mount. And then I can kind of mock up a straight line down to here as best as possible. Now, if I choose to run air conditioning, I'm going to have to put on the air conditioning bracket here just to kind of mock up to make sure I can clear it. Again, I don't know whether or not I'm going to run air conditioning or not, but I don't want to build around the option of not being able to have it. So I would do a bunch of stuff and then I'd like to retain it. And then I've made a bunch of stuff that is in the way, then that would piss me off. So we're going to pretend that we're using AC and try and get around that as best as possible. The external wastegate bolts up on top here. Comes with a really nice dump tube. So far, everything looks like it's got good clearance and stuff. Again, I don't have the bell housing and stuff on yet. But it looks like I've got ample clearance here with the motor out. So that appears to be good. As I said before, I've gone back to the 4-square style manifold, which is the older style. The original head for Smokey was cracked really bad, and I had an older style head, the 4-plug head. So I've revamped the 4-plug head, and then of course the bolt pattern was different, so I had to go back to the 4-square manifold. So I port matched all that, which I showed you in a previous video, and then just cleaned up the upper intake. I put on a newer style Thunderbird or 95 plus Mustang 5-liter throttle body. So it's a bigger, I think it's 65 mil. The 4-cylinder one is way smaller. Because I'm now running the older style 4-plug head, the mounting for the alternator bracket here is slightly different. Basically, they utilize a different alternator bracket. Now, some of the bolt pattern is still on here, but basically with the newer style alternator bracket, I've had to notch the edge out of here, and I'm going to have to tie it into the manifold bolt like so. It will work, the holes line up and everything, but that's how it's going to have to go. So with this modification here, that just trimming out the ear, I'm able to utilize that bracket. So that bracket now is all good. So here we have the older style 4-square manifolds running the Thunderbird big throttle body. So at first glance, everything looks good, like everything's going to work properly. So the problem being, I'm running an older style valve cover, and it's a non-hump valve cover. Plus, I'm running a way bigger throttle body, so now I have a clearance issue. So now, where the hump would be on the standard steel stamp pan, there's nothing here, and now I'm touching the throttle body before I can bolt down tight. So I'm going to make myself a spacer, maybe just even 1/2 inch or whatever I can find. I just need a little bit of clearance here just to be able to put on the boot and the clamp to tighten up. While I'm doing so, I'm going to drill and tap 2 holes in the bracket that I make, and I'm going to rehang the ignition module off the side here, because on the newer style manifold that came off Smokey, hung on the side of the manifold right here. So we're going to mock that up as well. Okay, so what we're going to do is, first to start, is we're going to reclock this turbo a little bit so we can get it kind of lined up where we want it. You want the oil and the drain lines as much straight up and down as possible. I talked to a turbo shop, and they said you don't want any more than 1 o'clock to the feed line or 7 o'clock for the return line at any spot. It needs to be within those parameters, or it can't drain fast enough, and then you can burn up a turbo. Let's see what Amazon brought. Whoa. Turbo Mustang's rebuild kit for the Garrett Turbo. Turbo Mustang's gonna get a big turbo again. Yay. So trim this ear off to start, right here. And we'll see what that gives us for clearance. And this is where we're at. We've remounted the motor mount. I've trimmed off that ear, and we're just gonna put on the bottom side of this motor mount here, and then I can see whether or not we've got clearance. So basically, we're going to use an adapter like this. That's going to bolt onto the bottom of the turbo. There's not enough room to do a straight shot with a 45, so we'll probably end up going to use a straight. We'll put a straight on and see if we have enough room for that. So the straight, we might have enough room to do it. I'll grab a piece of hose and mock this up, and we'll see what happens from there. So once I have my spot marked, I'm going to take the green tape, and I'm going to put the green tape directly center so it covers both sides of my line, and I'm going to cut in the middle of the tape. You want to wrap the tape like fairly tight, because we're trying to keep all the frayed ends of the metal from sticking out after we cut it. And when you cut it, you want to cut it quick and fast. The hotter you get it, the more it frays. There's our cut in. Now we're going to clean this out with brake clean, and we're going to put some lube in there and install our AN fittings. So this has a chamfer on the inside. I put it in a socket so I have some grip on it. When you attempt to put this on your hose, you have to make sure all the little stray ends are actually in there. If you don't, you're going to have a big hassle. So don't push and thread until you're confident you have all the hairs of the metal in there. You'll know when you look inside, I don't know if you can't see that or not, but the hose comes up to about here on here. And you can see it just inside there. You need to make sure it's all bottomed out. If it's not bottomed out, the hose can slip out and you're going to have a compromised fitting. This end is also chamfered. It's going to go down into the hose and it's going to expand inside there and make a nice tight seal. So when you start it, just make sure that you kind of wiggle it, put lots of lube on it, get it started, and then you can thread it in. I'm just going to slip into the trailer, use my AN wrench on this so I don't scratch the crap out of it. And I'm going to install the other fitting and I'll get back to you after that. Okay, we got our line made to test fit. Now, as a rule of thumb, I like to make sure that the two pieces are threaded down as tight as possible, but depending on the hose thickness and the type of hose nowadays, you might not be able to get it all the way flush without damaging the threads. One end is good. This end, I'd like to get it down further, but I felt as though that's as far as I could go without damaging the fitting. And I know it's tight, so it'll have a good seal, so I'm going to run with that. So this is what we end up with. Pretty straight shot directly down into the pan. It looks like we're going to clear the motor mount just enough. I'm going to grab the air conditioning pump and just make sure that that clears from there. Let's get the air conditioning pump and see if that fits. So success. We have clearance in all our spots for our turbo drain. So happy with all that. So now we're going to move on to the next thing. The next mock-up we're just checking is the coil pack from the 92 motor. Obviously the head has changed. The bolting might be different. So just at first glance when I mock this up, it does look like all the mounting is there on the older head versus the newer head. So the mounting for the coil pack is going to be good. The only difference I'm going to change here is because we're going from an 8-plug head to a 4-plug head, we're going to eliminate one coil. We're going to only run the main sparking coil, and the coil that is for emissions related stuff, which is basically lights the spark plugs on the compression stroke to improve emissions, we're going to eliminate that since we don't have the other plugs. So I'm going to trim this bracket down and that'll be mocked up for that spot, so that problem is taken care of. Another small detail is that for swapping to the turbo style motor, you're going to go away from the PCV valve and you're going to run a breather box. The breather box is located on the side of the block on the driver's side, and the outlet right here, down here, I'll take a picture of that, used to face forward. When I rebuilt the motor, I turned it around and faced it back. The reason I face it to the back of the engine is because I'm going to run the hoses around the back of the motor. I've also teed a spot into the valve cover. That's going to be a secondary breather. We're going to run both hoses up around the side of the fender, and then we're going to go down to the A-frame and mount this down at the low point on the frame for all the crankcase vapors to enter into. After a while, every so often, you just release this valve at the bottom and you can drain any more moisture or any kind of gunk that's built up inside the breather box. It's a must-have for turbo applications. So that's about as far as we can go with mock-up on this today. I got to gather some parts and modify a few things, and I'll come back to this. So we're going to move into the trailer and we're going to do a little bit of clearancing on the intercooler pipes. I'll see you over there. So as we were talking about earlier, I wasn't sure exactly how these pipes went. Judging by the 3 pictures that I found, you can tell that the pipe is not coming up on an angle and coming up through this side as I was suspecting, just because it's supposed to be a no-cut kit and there's not a lot of room. I do believe, though, that it's going to be coming in through the bottom like this. I believe that this upper pipe here is in the very close to the correct location. I mean, really, that's the only way it can go. And I'm going to move the radiator over. I'm going to move the intercooler over, massage it, get as much room as I can. And then I'm going to notch some spots out to gain some clearance for the pipes. So at this point, reading the directions, when I'm looking at it, it looks like this pipe here should be on top of the intercooler hose. But it physically can't. So I don't want to trim anything on this side until I know for sure. That side trimmed out and it's perfect. I'm happy with that amount of room. And this side now, since I've shifted it over, needs a little bit of a trim and it's good. Other than that, we just need to figure out if it goes on top or down below, and it's really hard without a motor in the car. But I'll continue on wrestling on here and see if I can figure it out. Okay, I might have figured it out. I have to make some measurements with the turbo car, but I might have figured it out. So basically, out of the intercooler, slight incline up, runs above the boost pipe, runs above the intercooler pipe through. Actually, very minimal trimming needed if this is how it goes. Up into the engine bay. Blow off valve's going to be there. Intake, obviously that has to be raised up. This one just seems a little bit far over for this one here. I'm just not 100% sure whether or not that's exactly where it's going to go and fit, but that's about as good as I'm going to be able to get this fitting. I can do a little bit of clearancing until I get the motor in. Hurry up, JEGS, I need my head bolts. Until next video, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you like the videos, and I'll see you next time.